My son told me I was too old to be on my own, too slow, too fragile, and too much of a burden. In his eyes, I wasn't a mother anymore. I was a problem to be solved, without asking me, without even giving me a chance to argue. He placed me in a nursing home and stepped into my house as though I had already passed away. But I was not gone. I was not confused. And I certainly was not finished. While he imagined I would fade quietly into the background, I was planning something else, something he would feel every single time. He opened the front door of my home. This is the story of how I made him regret the day he decided to underestimate his own mother. I raised Jason with hands that blistered and bled from endless work. My heart stretched beyond exhaustion to give him a life worth living. After my husband passed away, Jason became the center of my world. Every breath, every choice, every sacrifice circled back to him. I scrubbed floors until my knees ached so badly that I could barely stand at night. I skipped meals when money ran low so he could have enough to eat. I pawned the one piece of jewelry that mattered, my wedding band, to buy him a proper suit for graduation. Not once did I ask for thanks. I believed love would return to me in the moments I needed it most, but I was wrong. One Tuesday morning I fainted in the kitchen. Nothing serious, I thought. Probably low blood sugar. Standing too long on an empty stomach. Later that evening, Jason and his wife Danielle rushed over, all smiles of concern. "Mama, we just want what's best for you," Jason said, his tone rehearsed. While Danielle nodded at his side, they brought me soup, asked about old paperwork, and kept reminding me how difficult it must be for someone my age to manage a house. What I didn't know then was that they had already spoken to a lawyer behind my back. I didn't know Danielle was whispering to neighbors, telling them I was slipping mentally. I didn't know she had already changed the locks on my own doors. A week later, they invited me to lunch, just the three of us. Jason smiled. "You need a break. Let us spoil you a little." I didn't bring a bag. I didn't pack a charger. I didn't even wear my best shoes. I thought it was just lunch. Instead, they drove me to a building with beige walls and plastic flowers lining the halls. "Just for a few days, Mama," Jason said, hugging me as if he meant it. "Rest up. The nurse will help you get settled." Danielle kissed my cheek, her lip gloss sticky and cold against my skin. And then they walked away. They never came back. The room was bare. No photographs, no familiar books, no calendar on the wall, just a stiff bed and a lonely dresser. When I asked the nurse for a phone so I could call my son, she told me I'd have to wait until visiting hours. "But he just left," I whispered. She frowned, then handed me a stack of papers with my name on them. Forms I had never seen. But Jason's signature was there. Checked boxes for medical consent, residential admission, long-term observation. My son had committed me. I sat on that unfamiliar bed with my hands folded tight, as if I were in church, trying to keep from shaking. But the shaking came anyway. The next morning, I asked to speak with the administrator. Surely this was a mistake. I was not senile. I was not dying. The woman looked at me like I was already gone. "Your son said you're unsafe on your own. He reported episodes of confusion. We were told to prepare for long-term care." I wanted to scream, to tear the walls down with my bare hands. But a voice inside told me that if I screamed, it would only prove them right. So I waited. 3 long days passed in silence. On the 4th, I was finally granted access to a phone. I called Jason, straight to voicemail. I called again and again. Nothing. I dialed Danielle. 1 ring, then blocked. The same woman who once cried in my kitchen about how hard marriage was had blocked me out of her life like I was nothing. I sat by the window, staring at a courtyard filled with people who barely remembered their own names. Some yelled at shadows. Some drooled into their laps. Others sat quietly lost in a fog. And I thought, is this where I end? After everything I gave? After every sacrifice I made so Jason could have a future? The answer came sharp and clear. No. That night, I asked the night nurse for a pen and a notebook. She smiled, thinking I wanted to write poems or prayers. She handed me a small spiral book from the activity closet. But I wasn't writing dreams. I was writing a battle plan. I listed dates, bank accounts, property deeds, transactions, and every detail I could remember. I wrote down the name of my lawyer, Monica Reeves, a woman I hadn't spoken to in years but who had never erased me from her client list. I was not delusional. I was not confused. And I sure as hell was not dead. They thought they had silenced me. They thought I was too old to fight back. But I had survived worse. I had survived marriage. I had survived cancer. And now I would survive this. Only this time I wouldn't just survive. I would fight back. And Jason would learn that sometimes the quietest woman in the room is the one planning the loudest storm. Monica Reeves didn't answer the first time I called. I couldn't blame her. It had been years since we last spoke. But I left a message. Short, sharp, deliberate. Monica, this is Dolores Mayfield. My son has committed fraud in my name and placed me in a facility against my will. I still have access to our joint accounts and original documents. Call me. By noon the next day, my phone rang. Mrs. Mayfield? Monica's voice carried both surprise and urgency. Are you safe? As safe as a woman can be, I replied. When her only child has locked her away and assumes she won't bite back, she exhaled heavily. Tell me everything. And so I did. That Friday she arrived, drove 3 hours in the pouring rain, walked through the front doors of the facility, and introduced herself to the nurse as my attorney. The staff grew uneasy instantly. I saw the shift in their faces, the manager pulling her aside, trying to explain how everything was in my best interest. Monica was not impressed. She stepped into my room with her briefcase and eyes burning like fire. You're not staying here another week, she told me. And if they fight us, we'll sue them. 2. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. We sat together and reviewed everything. Documents Jason had forged, a power of attorney I never signed, the deed to my home that still bore only my name. Jason had assumed I had forgotten about the joint bank account. He was wrong. I had never removed him, but I still had full access. I had been quiet too long. Do you want to go nuclear? Monica asked, her tone careful but steady. I looked her dead in the eye. No, I want to go biblical, she smirked. Then we start with revocation. You're mentally competent. You still have your rights. First, we strip him of every bit of control he thinks he has. Within days, Monica filed an emergency motion to revoke the forged power of attorney. She submitted an evaluation from the facility's own doctor, who had already told me privately he saw no sign of dementia or confusion. Then she opened a case against Jason for elder exploitation and document fraud. And finally, she froze the account he'd been draining to pay his shiny mortgage. The day I walked out of that nursing home, I didn't look back. No goodbyes. No farewells. Just a small bag of clothes Monica had purchased for me and the slow, steady walk toward freedom. Freedom has a smell. And that day it smelled like rain-soaked pavement and fresh air after a storm. We didn't return to my house. I didn't want to see it. Instead, Monica checked us into a private extended stay suite for the weekend. There, we planned the next strike. Jason had no idea I was out yet, but he would soon. That weekend, Monica filed a petition to enforce a partition sale of my property. Jason had been living in a house he did not legally own without my consent. We had the right to force a sale, and if he refused to leave, the courts and law enforcement would see to it. Because the deed carried my name alone, every penny would flow to me. I pictured Jason and Danielle lounging on my velvet couch, sipping wine they couldn't afford, bragging to their friends about inheriting a house from a confused old woman. They hadn't inherited anything. They had stolen it. And now they would choke on it because the deed carried my name alone. Every penny would flow to me. I pictured Jason and Danielle lounging on my velvet couch, sipping wine they couldn't afford, bragging to their friends about inheriting a house from a confused old woman. They hadn't inherited anything. They had stolen it. And now they would choke on it. The process moved faster than I expected. Within a week, preliminary hearings were complete. At 7 a.m. on a Tuesday, Jason and Danielle were served. According to Monica's process server, Danielle screamed. Jason went pale and slammed the door. I didn't need to see it myself. Just knowing was enough. That evening, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I ignored it. It rang again and again. Finally, I answered. Mom? Jason's voice trembled, small, almost childlike. We got some papers today. Is this real? Silence, I let him hang in it. You can't be serious, he rushed on. You're going to kick me out of my own house? My house, I corrected calmly. The one you threw me out of. He went quiet. I never signed those documents, Jason. You forged my name. You froze my accounts. You tried to erase me. That's not what... I cut him off. I was left in a facility with no warning, no clothes, no choice. Lied to, manipulated, legally violated. So yes, Jason, I'm serious. His voice cracked. You're really going through with this? Yes, you have 30 days to get out. I hung up before he could respond. That night, I slept deeper than I had in months. Monica and I toasted with cheap sparkling cider in paper cups, watching old game shows from our hotel room. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, my choice, my freedom, my moment. The next morning, we met a young couple interested in buying the house. Newly married, full of hope. They adored the arched hallways, the garden, the little details I had once scrubbed with my bare hands. This place feels alive, the wife said, her palm brushing the kitchen counter. Like it wants to be loved again? I nodded slowly. It does. I accepted their full cash offer before the day was out. In less than 2 weeks, the deal was closed. Jason never said a word. Danielle, however, sent me a furious message on Facebook. We're your family. I can't believe you're doing this. This was our future. I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed one sentence back. No, I was your past. And you buried me too early. Then I blocked her. No tears, no smile. Just peace. Because I wasn't finished yet. I still had one more move to make, and it was the best part of the plan. The ink on the sale papers was barely dry when I made my next call. Do you still have that listing? I asked Monica. She chuckled. The one next door to your old property? Yes, ma'am. Why? Don't tell me I am... 2 weeks later, I held the keys to the house directly beside the one Jason thought he'd stolen. The symbolism was delicious. My son had imagined he could erase me, bury me in some nursing home, and live like a king in a palace built with my sweat. Now, every time he looked out of his window, he would see me alive, breathing, and thriving. Call it petty if you wish. I call it poetic justice. I furnished the place modestly. Nothing extravagant, just warm curtains, soft chairs, and a table big enough for coffee with friends. I hung pictures of my late husband and myself, reminders that love had once lived here, and it would live again. The walls whispered with freedom. The first morning I stood on my porch, sipping coffee, Jason came outside. He froze mid-step, mouth falling open like a man who'd seen a ghost. Good morning, I called cheerfully, lifting my mug. Lovely neighborhood, isn't it? He stared at me, color draining from his face. What are you doing here? Living, I said simply. Something you tried to take from me. His jaw worked, but no words came out. Danielle appeared at the doorway, eyes wide with disbelief. I waved sweetly. She turned and stormed back inside. I laughed softly to myself. The game had only just begun. Over the following weeks, I made my presence known. Every Saturday, I hosted gatherings, tea, cookies, sometimes small dinners. I invited neighbors, old church friends, even Monica when she wasn't buried in cases. We laughed loudly on the porch, music playing softly in the background. Jason and Danielle couldn't avoid hearing it through the walls. I kept my yard immaculate. Flowers bloomed bright and full, their colors spilling across the fence line like fireworks. I made sure the grass was trimmed perfectly, so that the contrast to Jason's neglected lawn was obvious to anyone passing by. One afternoon, I even caught Danielle peeking through their blinds, watching as I planted roses. I gave her a cheerful wave. She yanked the curtain closed. It was a silent war, but I was winning. Still, not every moment was sweet. Some nights, lying in my new bedroom, I thought about the boy I once rocked to sleep, the child who had clung to me after nightmares. I remembered scraped knees, birthday parties, the first time he called me mommy. How had that boy become this man, the one who would sign my name on papers I never touched, who would toss me away like an old shoe? The ache was real. The betrayal cut deeper than any wound I'd ever known. But grief is lighter when it shares space with purpose. And I had plenty of purpose left. One Sunday morning, I saw Jason mowing his lawn for the first time in months. He moved with stiff, angry motions, sweat dripping down his back. Danielle sat on their porch, arms crossed, glaring in my direction as if I had ruined her life. I smiled at them both. A smile of peace, a smile of power, because they still didn't understand. I wasn't out for revenge. I wasn't trying to destroy them. I was simply showing them that I could not be erased, that their cruelty had not broken me, that I would live on, not quietly in a corner, but boldly, in the house right next door. And every day they saw me was a reminder of the choice they had made, the choice to betray, the choice to lie, the choice to bury their own mother alive. That was a weight they would carry forever. As for me, I carried nothing but peace and a cup of hot coffee on my porch every morning. The weeks turned into months, and my little house blossomed into something more than a home. It became a sanctuary. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. Every morning began the same. I brewed a pot of coffee, stepped onto my porch, and let the sunlight rest on my skin. Neighbors grew used to waving at me as they passed by. Some stopped to chat, curious about the lady who came back from the grave. As one teenager jokingly called me, it didn't bother me. In fact, it made me smile. I had come back from the grave, a living burial, orchestrated by my own flesh and blood. But I was no ghost. I was flesh, voice, laughter. And unlike before, I had no reason to hide. Monica encouraged me to join a community group. At first I resisted. "I'm too old for new beginnings," I told her. She shook her head firmly. "You're too alive to sit in the past. Go." So I did. I joined a small book club that met on Wednesdays in the library downtown. At first I sat quietly, listening as others debated stories. But soon enough, I found myself contributing, offering opinions, laughing, even disagreeing once or twice. It felt good. It felt human. I wasn't Dolores the forgotten widow anymore. I wasn't Dolores the abandoned mother. I was simply Dolores, my own woman, my own voice. Meanwhile, Jason was crumbling. The whispers around town reached me before he did. He had trouble keeping up with bills. He'd overextended himself, counting on money that no longer existed. Danielle worked extra shifts, her bitterness simmering. More than once, I overheard their arguments drifting through the thin walls between our houses. "You promised," Danielle hissed one night. "You told me the house was ours, paid for. Now we're drowning, Jason, drowning." His voice was low, defeated. I didn't think she'd fight back. I sat in my living room, knitting in silence, letting their words wash over me. No joy, no triumph. Just a quiet reminder. Justice doesn't always need a courtroom. Sometimes it arrives in whispers, in unpaid bills, in restless nights. One Sunday afternoon, I was planting tulips when Jason shuffled into his driveway. He looked thinner, older, the weight of his choices carved into his face. For a moment I saw the boy he once was, the boy who had tugged on my hand, begging for candy at the corner store, who had cried when his goldfish died. But then he opened his mouth. "Mom," he said quietly, "can we talk?" I stood, brushing dirt from my gloves, and met his eyes. "There's nothing left to talk about, Jason. You made your choices. And I made mine." His lips trembled. I didn't think you'd really go through with it." I tilted my head. "That was your first mistake, underestimating me." He lowered his gaze, nodding slightly, then walked back inside without another word. I watched him disappear into the house he thought would be his forever. A house that, one way or another, would slip through his fingers. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to gloat. His regret was loud enough. What I needed was peace, and I had it. For the first time in years, I was building a life on my own terms. Friends, laughter, freedom. My days were filled with purpose. My nights with rest. I no longer asked myself why Jason betrayed me. Some questions don't deserve answers. Instead, I asked myself something far more important. What will I do with the time I have left? The answer came easily. I would live, boldly, fully, loudly enough that no one could ever silence me again. And every time Jason peeked through his window to watch me laughing with friends, sipping coffee or planting another row of flowers, he would be reminded of a truth that could never be erased. He had tried to bury me, but I had risen. Time is a quiet teacher. Weeks became months, and the sharpness of betrayal dulled into something else, a scar. Always there, always visible, but no longer burning. I built a rhythm in my new life. My porch became my throne, my garden a testament to resilience. Laughter echoed through my walls again. I had rediscovered myself, not the mother, not the widow, not the woman locked away, but simply Dolores. Jason and I rarely spoke. When we did, it was in passing, short, brittle exchanges that carried more silence than words. He still lived next door. But the house that once felt like his victory now looked like his prison. The shutters sagged, the paint chipped, and the grass grew too long between half-hearted attempts to tame it. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile at his downfall. But I also didn't intervene. I had given enough of myself to a son who saw me as an obstacle instead of a mother. That debt was paid. One evening, as the sun bled orange across the horizon, Jason came to my porch. He looked hollow, a man carved by regret. For a long time he stood there saying nothing. Finally, he whispered, "I'm sorry." I studied him, searching for the boy I once knew. But he was gone. In his place was a man broken by his own greed. A man who had gambled with his mother's love and lost. Sorry doesn't unwrite signatures you forged, I said softly. It doesn't undo the days I spent locked away, wondering if my life was over. It doesn't fix the nights you slept peacefully. In my house while I stared at blank walls in a facility you chose for me. His eyes filled, but I held firm. I don't hate you, Jason, I continued. But I don't trust you. And I don't forgive you. Not yet, maybe not ever. He swallowed hard, nodded once, and walked away. I didn't call him back. That night I wrote a letter, my will. Simple, clear, ironclad. I left instructions for my modest estate, for the house, for every account. Jason's name appeared nowhere. Instead, I left everything to a local scholarship fund for young women pursuing law. A small thank you to Monica, who had given me back my freedom. And a final message to my son, love is earned, not inherited. As I sealed the envelope, I felt no bitterness, just peace. Because this was my legacy, not the house, not the money, but the truth. The story of a woman who refused to be erased. I lived, I fought, I rose, and every flower that bloomed in my garden, every laugh that carried across the fence, every sunrise I welcomed on that porch was proof of a victory greater than revenge. Jason had tried to bury me, but I had become the roots, and roots always grow back stronger.